Did you know that in multiple independent tests across the United States, nearly 3 out of 4 bottles labeled extra virgin didn't actually qualify as extra virgin by the time they reached American store shelves? Not because of bad taste alone, but because the oils were already oxidized, heat damaged, or blended in ways the average shopper would never suspect. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments. And I will give you a heart. For years, Americans have been told that extra virgin olive oil is the healthiest oil in the kitchen. Good for your heart. Good for your brain. Good for your inflammation. But behind the labels and marketing, a different story has been unfolding, one that most shoppers never hear about. When US researchers pulled bottles from everyday supermarkets and ran them through sensory testing and chemical analysis, a significant number failed to meet the international extra virgin standard. Many were already stale or showed sensory defects like rancidity and fermentation long before a customer ever twisted the cap open. And here's what people never realize: once an olive oil is oxidized, the very compounds that make it healthy, polyphenols, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory elements, are already gone. Instead of protecting your heart, you may be swallowing the byproducts of breakdown and heat exposure. Those pretty green bottles and imported-sounding labels don't tell you any of that. At the same time, most Americans assume the words extra virgin, imported, or cold-pressed actually mean something important. But under US labeling rules, those terms aren't always used the way people think. There have been lawsuits over misleading imported from Italy claims when the oil was actually sourced from multiple other countries and only bottled in Italy. There have been accusations of using clear bottles that couldn't protect the oil from light exposure during shipping across hot warehouses, trucks, and store storage rooms. And there have been long-standing concerns about how long these oils truly sit between harvest, bottling, US import, and the moment you bring it home. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You can walk into any American supermarket today, pick up a bottle of olive oil that looks high-end, pay a premium price for it, and still end up with a bottle that wouldn't legally qualify as extra virgin under stricter international standards. And yet, the conversation is messy. Some industry groups insist that the fake olive oil panic is exaggerated. They say the US market is improving, and that many of the worst offenders have tightened up their operations over the past decade. On paper, that sounds reassuring. But at the same time, independent blind taste tests, consumer complaints, and chemical analyses continue to raise the same red flags: freshness problems, storage issues, mislabeled country of origin, and quality that drops long before the expiration date on the back of the bottle. So who should you trust? To answer that, we dug through US-based testing results, consumer lawsuits, import patterns, storage problems, price traps, and brand behavior, and pulled together the most important facts the average American shopper needs to know. We are not here to hype fear. We're here to help you understand what's actually in your kitchen, and what you can do to stop wasting your money on weak, stale oil that can't deliver the health benefits you bought it for. In this investigation, we'll break down 1. The biggest US brands that have faced major quality questions, legal challenges, or testing failures over the years. Not rumors, patterns. 2. The bottling practices and packaging choices that quietly destroy the oil's quality long before it hits your cart. 3. The exact phrases on a label that should make you put a bottle back on the shelf immediately. 4. The price ranges that almost guarantee disappointment, and the ones that offer the highest chance of real, fresh, trustworthy extra virgin oil. And most importantly, we'll reveal the 2 types of olive oils sold in the US that experts say give you the highest odds of getting the real thing. Brands and bottle styles that protect the oil, hold up to testing, and give you the polyphenols you're actually paying for. By the time you finish this full breakdown, you'll never buy olive oil the same way again. Brand 1. The American bestseller with a reputation problem. Let's start with one of the biggest names in American supermarkets. A brand you've seen in Walmart, Kroger, Publix, Target, and Costco for years. A bottle most families have bought at least once, believing the name meant quality. Brand 1. Pompeian Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Pompeian is one of the highest-selling olive oil brands in the United States. Their labels promise extra virgin, cold-pressed, first pressing, and imported. They use all the right marketing triggers that make Americans feel confident that what they are buying is the real deal. But here's the problem. This brand has been at the center of some of the most persistent questions about freshness, flavor defects, and quality consistency in the US market. For years, independent taste tests have repeatedly flagged issues like stale aromas, flat flavor, and signs of oxidation. Not because the olives were bad, but because the oil had already lost its sharpness and bitterness long before it hit the American shelf. That's the quiet truth behind imported olive oil in the US. It travels far, sits long, and often ages poorly. Pompeian has also faced criticism for a bottling choice that experts constantly warn about: clear plastic bottles. Clear plastic is one of the worst possible containers for olive oil. It allows light to hit the oil directly, triggering oxidation. It also offers weak protection against heat exposure during shipping, especially across the United States, where trucks cross deserts, southern highways, and high-heat storage depots in summer. By the time a clear plastic bottle reaches a California Walmart or a Florida Publix, the oil inside may have already degraded. And because the US has no mandatory harvest date labeling, most shoppers have no way to know when that oil was actually pressed. Pompeian is also part of another long-running frustration: vague origin labeling. The bottle may say imported from Italy, but the fine print can include Spain, Greece, Tunisia, Argentina, or Morocco. Sometimes it lists multiple countries in a rotating blend. That doesn't make it illegal, but it makes it unpredictable. If every bottle comes from a different blend, quality can swing wildly between batches. Some shoppers notice that one bottle tastes mild and pleasant, while the next one tastes flat, greasy, or dull. That inconsistency comes from blending oils from multiple countries, harvested at different times, stored in different environments, and shipped through different ports. Even more concerning, American consumers have filed lawsuits in the past accusing imported brands, including this one, of misleading marketing and exaggerated claims about freshness and purity. Most of these cases were settled quietly, without admissions of wrongdoing, but the message was clear: shoppers believed the oil in the bottle didn't match the promise on the label. So the big question becomes: if a brand sells millions of bottles a year, sits under bright supermarket lights, travels thousands of miles, uses clear or light-tinted plastic, blends multiple origins, and faces ongoing questions about freshness, should you trust the extra virgin claim? Because once an oil loses its bitterness, its peppery kick, and its grassy aroma, it's not extra virgin. It's just another cooking oil with a premium price tag. And this is only the first brand on the list. The next one is even more surprising, because it comes from a company that Americans associate with dependable quality, clean packaging, and imported excellence. Yet its olive oil has been at the center of some of the same complaints: oxidation, flavor defects, and inconsistencies, despite the premium reputation. And if you've been buying olive oil for years, there's a very good chance you've trusted this next name without ever questioning it. Type Pompeian if you've ever noticed the taste change between bottles. Brand 2, the premium American favorite with a familiar problem. Now let's talk about a brand almost every American recognizes. A name that sits on shelves right next to the pasta, the canned tomatoes, and the red sauce. A brand that feels Italian, sounds Italian, and markets itself as if every drop came from an olive grove in the Mediterranean. Brand 2, Bertolli Extra Virgin Olive Oil. If you ask the average American to name one imported olive oil they trust, Bertolli will show up on the list every time. It's one of the most widely distributed olive oils in the country. You see it at Costco, Walmart, Sam's Club, Amazon, Whole Foods, and nearly every major grocery chain. The brand is massive. The reputation feels premium. The marketing screams authentic. But here's the truth most Americans never hear. Bertolli has been at the center of some of the longest-running concerns about olive oil quality in the US. Not because it's the worst, but because it represents the core problem with imported oils in America: storage, heat exposure, and long shipping chains that destroy freshness before the bottle ever hits your pantry. For years, independent testers and sensory panels have flagged Bertolli's extra virgin oil for being flat, overly mild, or showing signs of early oxidation. Not because the olives were low quality, but because the oil had traveled farther than most foods ever should. Think about the journey. Pressed overseas. Shipped through multiple storage warehouses. Loaded onto cargo containers. Stored in ports, sometimes for weeks. Brought across climate zones in massive trucks. Placed under bright store lights. Every step exposes the oil to the two things that ruin extra virgin quality: light and heat. And yet, Americans continue buying it because the brand feels familiar and safe. But here's what's even more unsettling. Bertolli has faced multiple U.S. class action lawsuits over the years, accusing them of misleading marketing, unclear origin labeling, and packaging that couldn't realistically protect the oil's freshness. The label once claimed phrases like "imported from Italy" in bold lettering, even when the oil actually came from a blend of different countries. Consumers argued that they were paying for an Italian product, but receiving a multi-country mixture blended thousands of miles away from the image on the bottle. The brand eventually adjusted some of its labeling after these challenges, but the deeper issue never changed. Imported oils have a freshness problem, and no marketing phrase can fix an oil that sat in hot warehouses during a U.S. summer. And this leads to another problem: consistency. 1 month, a bottle might taste decent. The next month, it tastes flat. The next month, it tastes borderline rancid. Why? Because the oil in the bottle could be sourced from entirely different batches, different farms, different countries, and different seasons, each with its own storage timeline. Americans believe that paying more guarantees freshness. But with imported olive oil, price doesn't protect you from aging. It doesn't protect you from oxidation. It doesn't protect you from a supply chain that spans oceans. And here's something people rarely consider. If an oil is too smooth, too mild, or too neutral, that's not a sign of quality. That's a sign it may already be losing the bitterness and pepperiness, the exact sensations that signal real extra virgin status. Extra virgin should make you cough. It should taste alive. It should have a kick. When it doesn't, something is wrong. And now that we've covered Bertolli, we need to move to one of the most complicated names in American olive oil, because this next brand is massive, popular, and trusted, yet has one of the most confusing and controversial histories when it comes to extra virgin claims and quality questions. In fact, this next brand has been involved in more debates about authenticity and origin labeling than almost any other olive oil sold in American supermarkets. If you've ever bought a big green bottle during a sale or grabbed the value size because the price looked too good to ignore, you've probably bought this next one. Type Italy? If you've ever assumed Bertolli was pure Italian. Brand 3. The American value jug with the most confusing reputation. Now we get to one of the most complicated names in the entire US olive oil market. A brand that sells in huge plastic jugs. A brand you see at Walmart, Sam's Club, BJ's, Target, and discount stores all over America. A brand millions of families choose because it's cheap, familiar, and always sitting on the bottom shelf in giant containers. Brand 3. Filippo Berio and the big plastic jug problem. If you've ever wandered down the oil aisle looking for a big bottle at a low price, you've probably seen Filippo Berio. The name sounds incredibly Italian. The bottle looks Italian. The colors feel Italian. The branding leans hard into Mediterranean heritage. And for a lot of Americans, that's all it takes to trust it. But here's where the trouble starts. Filippo Berio has one of the most tangled histories in the American market when it comes to extra virgin claims, freshness concerns, lawsuits, and country of origin controversies. Not because the oil itself is inherently bad, but because the entire supply chain behind it is built around volume, not freshness. Let's start with the packaging. Many of Berio's most popular sizes come in large, clear-to-light plastic jugs. This is the worst possible combination for olive oil. Plastic lets oxygen in over time. Light accelerates oxidation. Large containers expose more air every time you open the cap. And plastic absorbs heat in transit faster than glass. By the time these jugs travel across the ocean, sit in distribution warehouses, and then spend months on American store shelves, the oil inside may already have lost the characteristics of real extra virgin olive oil. But the bigger issue is origin labeling. Filippo Berio is known for using blends from multiple countries. On the front, the label might highlight Italy. On the back, the fine print often lists a rotating mix of countries like Spain, Greece, Tunisia, Turkey, Morocco, or Portugal. Different countries. Different harvests. Different storage conditions. Different levels of freshness. This makes consistency almost impossible. One bottle might taste decent. The next one tastes dull. The next one has a faint stale smell. The next one is peppery but flat. That's what happens when every batch can come from entirely different origins. Filippo Berio has also been at the center of American class action lawsuits over misleading labeling. Consumers argued that they believed they were buying pure Italian oil based on the front label, only to discover that the actual oil came from a multi-country blend. While many of these cases were settled quietly, they revealed a bigger truth: Americans trust branding far more than fine print. And here's the most important part: extra virgin olive oil is extremely fragile. If it sits too long, heats up in transport, or is exposed to light, it loses what makes it extra virgin. And once those polyphenols and antioxidants break down, the oil may still be safe to eat, but it's no longer providing the health benefits you bought it for. Yet this brand continues to dominate the US market because of one thing: price. Americans see a huge plastic jug for a low cost and assume it's a smart buy. But olive oil doesn't work that way. Real extra virgin oil is seasonal, fresh, and time-sensitive. The bigger the container, the greater the chance it will go stale before you finish it. And when that container is clear plastic, sitting under bright store lights, the decline is even faster. If olive oil is too cheap, too smooth, too mild, too neutral, or too old, it's probably not extra virgin anymore, regardless of what the label claims. And if you think this is the end of the story, it's not. Because the next brand on our list is one of the most confusing of all, a company that markets its oil as premium, healthy, and trustworthy, yet constantly shows the same issues: vague origins, inconsistent taste, and shelf stability problems that no marketing campaign can hide. And Americans buy it in enormous numbers because it sits right at eye level, feels healthy, and looks like the safe, middle-of-the-road choice. Type big jug if you've ever bought the huge plastic Berrio container. Now let's talk about a brand that feels wholesome, a brand that markets itself around purity, family kitchens, and simple ingredients, the kind of company that designs its bottles to look clean, trustworthy, and modern so shoppers feel like they're making a healthier choice every time they reach for it on the shelf. Brand number 4, California Olive Ranch, Standard Blends. Years ago, California Olive Ranch built its entire reputation on producing real, fresh, American-grown extra virgin olive oil. Their early bottles were single origin, harvested and pressed in California, bottled close to the source, and praised for their authenticity and consistency. For a while, it was one of the few oils in US supermarkets that truly lived up to the extra virgin standard people expected. But as the brand became more popular and demand exploded, their supply simply couldn't keep up. That's when the shift happened, and it's the part most shoppers still don't realize. Instead of keeping the oil purely Californian, the company expanded into mass-market blends. These bottles look almost identical to the original versions, but the oil inside is completely different. The Global Blend and Destination series lines use olives sourced from South America, Portugal, and other regions, mixed with a smaller portion of California oil, and then bottled under the same California Olive Ranch name people already trust. None of this is illegal, but it changes everything about the product. Multi-country blends introduce massive inconsistency. Olives harvested at different times, stored in different climates, shipped across different ports, and pressed under different timelines don't behave the same once they're blended together. That's why one bottle might taste bright and peppery and the next one tastes flat, mild, or slightly stale. The oil is no longer coming from a single harvest with one flavor profile. It's coming from a worldwide mix of farms, seasons, and storage conditions. The biggest issue is the journey. Oil from South America may spend weeks in cargo containers, sitting in unpredictable temperatures before even reaching the United States. Once it arrives, it's blended, bottled, and shipped across American warehouses, trucks, and store shelves where it's exposed to heat and bright light, two things that destroy extra virgin quality faster than anything else. By the time these global blends land in a Texas Walmart, a Florida Publix, or a Nevada Smith's, the oil may already have lost much of the bitterness and peppery kick that define true extra virgin olive oil. And it's that loss, the disappearance of that peppery cough, that tells you the antioxidants and polyphenols have already broken down. Packaging makes it worse. California Olive Ranch bottles are nicer than the cheap clear plastic used by low-end brands, but many of their blends still come in light-tinted or partially transparent glass. That might look premium, but it doesn't fully protect the oil from store lighting or heat exposure during distribution. Extra virgin olive oil is extremely fragile. The moment it's exposed to too much light, heat, or time, it begins to lose the very compounds that make it healthy in the first place. When those compounds disappear, the oil may still be safe to eat, but it's no longer extra virgin in the sense that matters: the flavor, the bite, the antioxidants, the heart protective benefits. So here's the real problem. The California olive ranch that Americans think they're buying is not the one they're actually getting. People imagine they're buying a pure, fresh California oil pressed from local groves. Instead, they're buying global blends dressed in California branding. The respected single-estate bottles still exist, but those aren't the ones most shoppers put in their carts. The mass-market versions dominate the shelves, and those blends simply don't deliver the consistency, strength, or freshness that built the brand's reputation years ago. In other words, Americans believe they're choosing a premium, domestic olive oil because the bottle says California, but most of what they're actually buying is multi-origin oil that traveled farther, aged longer, and weakened more than they realize. It's not the worst oil in the country, but it's not what the label makes people assume, and that's exactly why it belongs on this list. Type California if you ever thought this brand was 100% US grown. Now let's move to a brand that feels premium the moment you look at it, a brand that sits on the nicer shelves in American grocery stores, packaged in dark glass that looks sophisticated and professional, a brand many people buy because it seems like the safe middle ground between cheap imports and expensive specialty oils. This is the bottle people pick up when they want something that feels reliable but not overpriced. Brand number 5, Lucini Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Lucini is one of those names that instantly gives off the impression of quality. The branding is elegant, the bottle shape looks artisanal, and the label promises high standards, hand-picked olives, and cold pressing. For many shoppers, that's more than enough. They see it in Whole Foods, Sprouts, Fresh Market, and upscale sections of big chains, and assume they're getting a fresher, purer, more carefully made extra virgin oil. And on the surface, it absolutely looks that way. The bottle is dark. The marketing is confident. The story behind the brand feels authentic. But appearance and performance aren't the same thing. Here's the truth most people never hear. Lucini has always walked a very thin line between premium branding and real-world consistency. While the company promotes the idea of small-batch, high-quality production, the reality is that Lucini is a large-scale supermarket oil with supply chains, transportation routes, and storage conditions that expose the oil to the exact same risks as every major imported brand in the United States. The oil travels long distances. It passes through multiple distribution centers. It sits under bright retail lighting. It endures heat exposure during shipping. And even though the bottle is dark, the journey is still long enough for the oil to begin losing its extra virgin qualities before it ever reaches your pantry. Real extra virgin olive oil has a distinct bite. It has bitterness, pepperiness, a grassy scent, and a slight burn in the throat. Those sensations come from compounds that are extremely sensitive to time, temperature, and light. Once those compounds are weakened, the oil becomes flat, overly smooth, or muted. And this is exactly the problem shoppers run into with Lucini. Some bottles taste lively, fresh, and vibrant. Others taste mild, soft, or strangely neutral. That level of inconsistency is a strong sign that the oil isn't holding up all the way through the supply chain. Another quiet issue is the one almost no shopper pays attention to: harvest date transparency. True premium olive oil brands put the harvest year directly on the label because they want you to know exactly how fresh your bottle is. Lucini rarely does this in a way that is clear or consistent across all its products, and when a brand avoids putting a harvest year front and center, it often means the timeline between harvest and purchase isn't something they want to highlight. Olive oil is seasonal, and the best brands work hard to bottle and ship it quickly. When dates are vague or missing, you're left guessing. And if that weren't enough, Lucini has another hidden weakness: its price-to-quality ratio. People assume that paying more automatically means better oil, but with Lucini, the higher price doesn't always reflect higher polyphenol levels or stronger flavor. In fact, the mildness many consumers report is a sign that the oil may not be as fresh or potent as the brand's premium appearance suggests. It looks high-end, but the taste often doesn't match the hype. The bottom line is simple: Lucini is not a bad oil, but it is not as premium as the branding implies, and the inconsistencies you get across different bottles make it hard to rely on if your goal is real, fresh, high antioxidant extra virgin quality. The marketing tells one story, but the taste tells another, and that's exactly why it belongs on this list. And the next brand is even more revealing, because it's the one that millions of Americans buy in giant containers at warehouse clubs, believing they're getting a bargain. But in reality, The size, the packaging, and the journey to the store almost guarantee that the oil inside will already be weakened by the time you open it. Type Lucini if you've ever opened a bottle that tasted way milder than you expected. Now let's talk about the brand millions of Americans buy without thinking twice, the giant bottle people toss into their Costco cart because it feels like a smart financial decision. The huge container sitting next to the rotisserie chickens and bulk paper towels, the one that convinces shoppers they're saving money while still getting something extra virgin and trustworthy. Brand number 6, Kirkland Signature, the large jugs. Kirkland is one of the most recognizable names in American retail, and Costco's private label brand has a reputation for offering better quality at lower prices across almost every category. That reputation is so strong that many shoppers assume the Kirkland olive oil must be a safe, reliable, high-value option. And in fairness, Costco does sell one type of olive oil that performs well, but that is not the one most people buy. The version that fills millions of American kitchens is the large, oversized plastic jug sold for a low price, and this specific product is the reason Kirkland sits on this list. The problem starts with the size. Real extra virgin olive oil is not designed to be stored for long periods once opened. It begins to lose its antioxidant content as soon as air, light, and heat reach it. When you buy a massive jug that takes months to finish, the oil survives a slow, steady decline every time the cap is twisted open. The oxygen exposure compounds over time, and the rate of oxidation in a large container is dramatically higher than in a small, well-sealed bottle. By the time most families reach the bottom of the jug, the oil no longer tastes sharp, peppery, or vibrant. It tastes flat, dull, and lifeless, because the polyphenols have long disappeared. Then there's the packaging, which is even worse. Costco's big Kirkland jugs are made of clear or lightly tinted plastic, and that combination is one of the most damaging environments for olive oil. Plastic offers weak protection against oxygen. It absorbs heat easily during shipping. It allows light through even under warehouse lighting. And because these jugs are huge, they sit in the pantry for long periods, giving the oil even more time to degrade. By the time you finish the jug, the oil can lose flavor compounds that make it extra virgin, even if it technically still fits within the broader category allowed by US standards. Next is the journey. Warehouse club oils often travel the longest distances and sit in the largest storage facilities. They are shipped in bulk, stored in bulk, and displayed in bulk under bright industrial lights for months at a time. Large shipments tend to experience more heat exposure, which weakens the oil before the consumer even touches the bottle. The combination of heat, light, oxygen, and time is enough to turn even a high-quality oil into something mediocre. And finally, there's the illusion of savings. Costco shoppers feel like they're getting a bargain, but the truth is that real extra virgin olive oil is a fresh product. It's not meant to be hoarded. When you buy a gallon of oil for a cheap price, you're not saving money, you're guaranteeing that most of that oil will lose its extra virgin qualities long before you finish it. The value disappears with the freshness, and the whole point of buying extra virgin, the flavor, the antioxidants, the heart benefits, quietly slips away. Kirkland's smaller, protected, glass bottle versions are a very different story, but the large plastic jugs that dominate American kitchens are a perfect example of how good branding and bulk pricing can mislead well-meaning shoppers into buying something that simply can't hold its quality. It's not that Costco is selling something dangerous. It's that the packaging, size, and supply chain make it nearly impossible for the oil to stay extra virgin for long, especially after opening. And the next brand on our list shows another side of the problem. The oils that look artisanal, claim to be cold-pressed, highlight Mediterranean imagery, and advertise rich flavor, yet still deliver inconsistent freshness and often fall apart the moment you compare the taste to real extra virgin standards. Type Kirkland if you've ever bought the big Costco jug and noticed the flavor fade. Now we get to a brand that Americans trust for one simple reason. The label looks traditional, the bottle looks European, and the name sounds like something you'd find in a small coastal town overlooking a grove of olive trees. It sits on shelves in nearly every supermarket, from Walmart and Kroger to Target and Amazon, and shoppers reach for it because it feels familiar, affordable, and safe. Brand number 7, Colavita Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Colavita is one of those brands that appears authentic at first glance. The dark green bottle looks intentional. The gold accents make the product feel imported and premium. The words authentic, traditional, and cold-pressed are printed where shoppers can see them. Everything about the packaging pushes the idea that this is a trustworthy, high-quality, family-owned olive oil with generations of Mediterranean experience behind it. And while that story sounds convincing, the oil inside often tells a different one. One of the biggest issues with Colavita is the same issue that plagues most imported olive oil in the United States: inconsistent freshness caused by long shipping times, multiple storage environments, and unpredictable temperature exposure during transit. Olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil, is incredibly sensitive to heat. When it sits in cargo containers that travel across oceans, pass through multiple ports, sit in warehouses, and move across the country in trucks that experience everything from summer heat waves to freezing temperatures, the chemical stability of the oil breaks down long before the consumer ever opens the bottle. This is why so many people who buy Colavita notice one bottle that tastes bitter and sharp, and the next bottle that tastes soft, mild, or almost flavorless. That inconsistency comes from the oil's journey, not necessarily from the olives themselves. Extra virgin oil needs protection from heat and light from the moment it's pressed, and once that chain breaks, the quality declines rapidly. Another issue is origin labeling. Colavita often highlights Italy heavily in its branding, but the fine print on the back frequently lists multiple sourcing countries. These may include Italy, Greece, Spain, Portugal, or Tunisia depending on the batch. When shoppers buy Colavita expecting pure Italian oil, they are often buying blends pulled from different harvests across several countries. And because each country has different harvest times and storage systems, the final product becomes a mixture of oils that didn't age at the same rate, didn't travel under the same conditions, and didn't start with the same flavor profile, which again explains why the taste can swing drastically from bottle to bottle. Colavita also faces the same packaging problems seen in most mid-level supermarket oils. While the bottle is darker than cheaper brands, it's still transparent enough to let in store lighting, which slowly weakens the oil as it sits on the shelf. Bottles that sit near the front, directly under bright LEDs, age faster than bottles kept in low light. Over weeks and months, this exposure breaks down the antioxidants and polyphenols that define true extra virgin quality. The result is a bottle that looks premium but no longer tastes like real extra virgin olive oil when the consumer finally opens it. The last issue with Colavita is the price versus performance gap. Many shoppers believe that paying a bit more guarantees a fresher, stronger oil, but with Colavita, the extra money often goes toward packaging, branding, and shelf placement rather than higher polyphenol levels or better protection from oxidation. In other words, the price suggests premium, but the flavor and performance behave more like a mid-tier oil that has endured too many miles and too many storage conditions to maintain true extra virgin quality. Colavita isn't the worst olive oil on the American market. It isn't unsafe, and it isn't fraudulent. But it is inconsistent, and inconsistency is the one thing that quality olive oil cannot survive. If the oil can't deliver the sharpness, bitterness, and pepperiness that real extra virgin should have, then the consumer isn't getting what they paid for, no matter how Italian the branding looks. Now that we've covered 7 of the most commonly purchased olive oil brands in the United States and exposed the hidden weaknesses in their packaging, transit routes, sourcing methods, and consistency, it's time to shift into the most important section of this investigation: the oils you can trust. Because despite all the problems in the US olive oil market, there are still a few options that consistently hold up to real-world testing, deliver strong flavor, and actually offer the health benefits people are looking for. Type Colavita if you've ever tasted a bottle that felt different from the last one. After going through 7 of the most commonly purchased olive oil brands in the United States and exposing the hidden problems behind their storage, shipping, packaging, and sourcing, it's natural for people to wonder whether there is any olive oil in America that's worth buying. The good news is yes, there are 2 types of olive oils that consistently hold up to real-world testing, deliver the peppery intensity that signals genuine extra virgin quality, and give you the antioxidants and polyphenols you're paying for. But they are not the ones you find in giant plastic jugs or flashy imported bottles with gold lettering. They are the oils that follow the 2 rules the American market almost never talks about: local production and protected packaging. Trusted option number 1, California Single Origin Extra Virgin Olive Oils. This is the closest thing Americans have to guaranteed freshness. When you buy a true single origin California olive oil, not a global blend, not an international mixture, but a bottle that was harvested and pressed entirely in California, you eliminate the biggest enemy of extra virgin quality: long-distance shipping. These oils are pressed, bottled, and distributed within a shorter window of time, which means they don't sit for months in foreign warehouses or cross oceans in hot containers. They move through fewer hands, fewer storage rooms, and fewer unpredictable environments. And because many California producers follow stricter standards than the generic US regulations, they tend to include harvest dates, batch numbers, and freshness information directly on the label. That transparency is something mass-produced imports rarely offer. When you open a real single-origin California oil, you should immediately notice a bright, grassy aroma and a sharp bitterness that hits the back of your tongue. You should feel a peppery burn in your throat, and in some cases, you may even cough. That cough isn't a flaw, it's the sign of high polyphenol content. These oils may cost more per ounce than the giant jugs at Costco or Walmart, but you are paying for antioxidants, flavor, and real extra virgin quality that hasn't been weakened by months of global travel. And because these oils come in smaller bottles and dark, protective glass, they maintain their strength far better once opened. Trusted option number 2, high-quality, dark bottle imported oils with PDO or PGI certification. If you prefer international olive oils, there is one category you can confidently choose from: certified origin oils that come from protected regions with strict regulations, bottled at the source, and packaged in dark glass or metal tins that shield the oil from heat and light. Look for 2 key certifications: PDO, Protected Designation of Origin, and PGI, Protected Geographical Indication. These labels mean the oil comes from a specific, legally protected region, not from a random blend of different countries. Oils from these certified regions are often harvested, pressed, and bottled in the same place, which dramatically increases the chance that the oil inside is real, fresh, and high in polyphenols. Because these regions take their branding seriously, they rarely allow low-quality blends to carry their certification. Another important detail is the packaging. True premium imported oils almost always use dark, opaque glass or metal tins. They rarely use clear bottles, and they never use plastic. That packaging choice is intentional because it protects the oil from light exposure during shipping and storage. When you open a certified, dark bottle import, you should smell fresh-cut herbs, green fruit, or a grassy aroma, followed by bitterness on the palate and a sharp peppery sensation in the throat. These sensations are the markers of a real extra virgin oil, and they are difficult to fake. Both of these categories, California single-origin oils and certified PDO/PGI imports, behave the way extra virgin oil is supposed to behave. They hold their flavor, they preserve their health benefits, and they give you a far more consistent experience than the mass-market blends that fill American shelves from top to bottom. And now that you know which oils actually deliver the quality you're paying for, it's time for the final and most practical part of this investigation: the simple tests that let you spot fake, stale, or low-quality olive oil in seconds, even if the bottle looks fancy, the branding seems premium, and the marketing tries to convince you otherwise. Now that you know which oils to avoid and which options you can trust, the most important skill you can learn is how to judge an olive oil for yourself, because marketing changes, labels change, supply chains change, and brands that were dependable can slip quietly into mediocrity without anyone noticing. The good news is that you don't need to be an expert taster or a chemist to protect yourself. There are simple checks you can do right in the grocery aisle and even easier ones you can do the moment you get home, and these quick tests are often more reliable than anything printed on the label. The first rule is to ignore the front of the bottle entirely. That's where the marketing lives. Words like premium, imported, cold-pressed, first press, and Mediterranean blend are not guarantees of quality in the United States. They are promotional phrases designed to make the product look expensive or traditional, even when the oil inside is flat, old, or poorly stored. The front of the bottle tells you almost nothing. The truth is always hiding on the back. The second rule is to look at the bottle itself. Real extra virgin olive oil is terrified of light and heat, so the first red flag is a clear bottle or a thin, lightly tinted bottle that lets you see the oil clearly. That may look attractive on a store shelf, but it's a guarantee of rapid degradation. You want dark glass or metal, the darker the better, because that's the only thing that protects the oil from light exposure while it sits in warehouses, trucks, and stores. If the bottle is clear or pale green, leave it where it is. No exceptions. The third rule is find the harvest date. Not the best by date, which is meaningless and often stretched far into the future to make the oil seem fresher than it is, but the actual harvest date that tells you when the olives were picked. Only high-quality producers put harvest dates on their labels, because they want you to know how fresh the oil is. If there's no harvest date anywhere on the bottle, that's not an accident, it's a deliberate omission. Buy oils that are at most 12 to 18 months from harvest. Anything older has already lost a large portion of its antioxidants. The fourth rule is read the fine print on the origin statement. If the back label says product of Spain, Italy, Greece, Tunisia, or Portugal, or contains oils from multiple countries, that means the oil is blended from different harvests collected at different times and stored in different environments. This kind of blending often results in uneven flavor, weak aroma, and inconsistent quality. The safest oils either come from a single country or, even better, a single region. If you see a long list of possible countries, walk away. The fifth rule is learn the price ranges that make sense. If a bottle of extra virgin olive oil is extremely cheap, especially in a large size, it's almost guaranteed to be weak or stale. Real extra virgin oil is a fresh, seasonal agricultural product, not a bargain basement cooking fat. The bigger the container and the lower the price, the higher the chance the oil is already past its prime. It's better to buy a small, high-quality bottle you can finish quickly than a massive jug guaranteed to turn flat by the halfway mark. The sixth rule is the smell test the moment you get home. Open the bottle and take a long, slow breath. Real extra virgin olive oil should smell alive, grassy, fruity, herbal, slightly bitter in the nose. If it smells like nothing, or smells waxy, stale, or like old nuts, the oil is already oxidized. Extra virgin oil should never smell like crayons, Play-Doh, warm plastic, or damp cardboard. Those scents are signs of age and heat exposure, and once you smell them, the oil's health benefits are already gone. The seventh and final rule is the taste test, which is more reliable than anything scientists can print on a panel. Pour a teaspoon of oil into a small glass, warm it slightly with your hand, and sip it. Real extra virgin oil has bitterness at the front of your tongue and a peppery kick at the back of your throat. Sometimes it's so sharp that it makes you cough, and that cough is the best sign of quality. It means the oil is rich in polyphenols, the compounds responsible for its heart, brain, and anti-inflammatory benefits. If the oil tastes flat, oily, flavorless, or overly smooth, it is almost certainly stale or poorly stored. Extra virgin oil should never be mild to the point of being invisible. Once you learn these simple tests, bottle color, harvest date, origin details, price reality, smell, and the bitterness and pepper test, you will never be fooled by branding again. You'll be able to walk through any American supermarket and instantly separate the oils worth buying from the ones that quietly lost their health benefits long before they reached your kitchen. And now that you've seen the full picture, you understand the truth. The US olive oil market is flooded with blends, stale imports, long shipping routes, weak packaging, and misleading marketing. But you also know exactly how to protect yourself, how to find the oils that actually deliver health benefits, and how to make sure every bottle you buy is real extra virgin olive oil, not just in name, but in taste, strength, and authenticity.